When you were meditating, just assume for the sake of the audience that they haven't read the book and that I haven't either. So but you mentioned when you were meditating in your friend's garden, I think that was a pyramid, right? That you were meditating under. And you're saying you're meditating with your eyes open. So when the craft appeared, did you actually see that with your physical eyes, or is it more like kind of a vision? How would you explain that?
It's kind of like both. It's like I'm seeing it with my mind's eye, but I'm also seeing it with my real eyes. If I
Mm.
close my eyes and I'm doing my work, everything I'm seeing with my mind's eye. When my eyes are open, it's like I'm seeing it with both. The craft was in a different density. So maybe other people, if they'd have walked through the garden, they might not have seen it. I don't know. But it was on a different frequency band. And if I hadn't have met my spiritual teacher, I would have never known how to deal with this situation because I wouldn't have been able to go and get in this in my physical body. I needed to be in a different density. And obviously, she taught me how to bring my light out of my body and travel. And that's what the Traveler book was all about that you were talking about earlier.
Mm.
But yeah, so bringing my light out of my body, it was integral to getting in that craft because when you bring your lights out of your body, you can choose different frequency bands depending on where you want to operate. So I was able to adjust my frequency to the frequency of the craft and get in. Yeah.
Mm. The thing about someone like yourself who's been kind of doing this work for a long time is it all becomes a bit matter of fact. And so I want to ask you about your first experience with astral projection, which I believe was with your teacher. But could you walk us through that? Because as myself, as someone who's got a fascination with that, I've only ever been able to achieve that once. And I know a lot of people go many years and they're still trying to actually get there. But I'm interested to hear what was your experience like. How did that precipitate?
Yeah. This is like, yeah, this is one of those experiences that it always brings up so much emotion in me because the way that this unfolded, um, I was given this book by my teacher, and it's called The Traveler. It's about these two brothers. I forget their names. That was years. Was one of them Chris? Was it Christopher? You just read it.
Uh, yeah, the names of the two characters. I have enough trouble with the author who's got like an Indian sounding name,
John
John.
12 Hawks is the author. John 12
Yes.
Hawks. Yeah, yeah. I just forget the two brothers' names. I think one of them
Yep.
was Christopher. I can't remember the other one. But anyway, it's about these two brothers, and they can kind of lie down, bring their soul, their light body out of their physical body and go traveling. And they're deemed dangerous to the brethren, which are like the government. And the brethren have these kind of beings that can chase them through dimensions. It's a cool book. And I read it and I was like, man, I know this is real. She's not giving me this for no reason. So, and it's a small book. You can read it in a day or so. So I phoned her up and I said, listen, I need to go traveling. She said, you better come round then. So I went round. She had this kind of like big barn that we used to work out of. So I've gone in, sat down in the chair, and she's taken me through this process where I've slowed my brain waves right down and I've slowed my heart rate right down. It was like, boom, boom. It was really slow. And I just kind of settled into this deep space. And she guided me into my heart. I opened my heart and I stepped out from my body into the space. And I turned around and looked at my body and I could see myself slumped in the chair. And I was like, this is crazy. But what was really bizarre for me is being out of my body. It was like I was still in my body. Like it wasn't really much different in terms of my thoughts and my emotions and my sensations. Everything was heightened, if anything. And anyway, I walked straight through the wall that we're in, and I was in this next room in her place, and I saw this old man in this checkered shirt, and she said, "Just leave him." Like so, I started seeing a lot more beings in the empty space. Like being in that frequency, it was much easier to tap into to what's on the other side. So I've walked past this being, I've gone through the wall, and I must have lived maybe 7, 8, 9 miles away from where she did her work. So, because at this time we'd moved from London up to Gloucestershire, okay, before we moved to New Zealand. When I met her, I was living in London. So we'd moved up to Gloucestershire. She was in Cheltenham. And I went straight to my house and I was outside the kitchen and I peered through the wall. I could stick my head through the wall, and Laura was making dinner for the kids. And I don't know what the kids had done, but she was like, "Meh, meh, meh, meh." She was like telling them off a little bit. And so I was like, okay, I need to check on that later. So anyway, I kind of went back, and as I'm going back through the space, I see these two little girls, and these two little girls, they've got like they look pretty. They're in white dresses, and they smile at me, and they've got these really pointed teeth, and she's communicating with me from back in the space all the time. She said, just leave them, come back. Anyway, I go back in, I sit back down in my body. Later on that evening, I checked with Laura and I said, were you making dinner for the kids earlier? You know, did you tell them off? And she's like, yeah, how'd you know that? I said, oh, I was watching from outside the window. Anyway, I just needed that confirmation to prove that what I was seeing was actually real, because there's still that kind of part of it that's like, is it actually really happening? So anyway, coming back to these two little girls, I went and spoke to them. And it turned out that these two little girls were stuck in this kind of dimensional field. And they were the daughters of one of the people that invested in our property company. Now, what happened is he lost a lot of money. So he just went one day. He left his wife and his children. And the wife, I'm not sure how long it had taken for her to get to this decision, but she decided that she was going to gas herself in the car with her children. So she committed suicide. She went back to the other side, and the kids got stuck in the in-between world. So anyway, a couple of nights later, I'm reading my daughter a bedtime story, and I'm just lying on a bed. She's there next to me. I'm reading the story, and I look up at the doorway to my daughter's bedroom, and the two little girls are there. And they're like smiling at me again, and I'm like, you know, all these pointy teeth. And anyway, I phoned my teacher back up, and I said, "Listen, I've got to come and see you. Like, these girls are here. What should I do?" So anyway, I went round. I think it was the next morning, and she said, "Right, we're going to go in and we're going to help these girls back to source, back to the spirit world." So anyway, we put these kind of suits of light on, and she took me into this like in between space, this dimensional space where lots of spirits that get stuck on their way over are. And it was like walking into this cave with like, it was black, like there was like untold bats, but they weren't bats. They were like spirits of beings that had got stuck. So we're going through this space. The energy is so heavy. We're going through it, and we see this door on the other side, and we open it up, and the lady is sat there, the mum. She's waiting for her children on the other side. So we took the little girls through and you know, introduced them back to the mother, and they were so happy when they kind of reconnected on the other side. And then the three of them went off on their journey. And so she called it soul rescue work. And so anyway, after that, we started doing a little bit more of that. That was another thing that she sort of introduced me to. And then we kind of came back. But this was kind of like my first experience of, you know, bringing my light out of body, having kind of interdimensional experiences, like by choosing it, you know, like it was a choice to go in and do this work. Another thing that happened when I was working with her, I don't think I've ever really shared this like properly with anybody, but years ago, I think it was like 2007, something like that. There was a little girl, an English girl. She was on holiday with her parents in Portugal, and she went missing. It was all over the news, like internationally. A little girl called Madeleine McCann, and I think it was a day or two after she went missing. And this is like, you know, a couple of years into my spiritual journey. I'm on the stepping machine in the gym, and I'm stepping away, and I see this picture of this little girl in my head, and she's in like a cave. And the cave has got a bed in it. And I'm sort of like connecting, but I'm on the kind of stepping machine. But my consciousness gets pulled into the cave. And she says, you know, it's Madeleine. I need you to help me. I was like, what? You know, so it's kind of like, I was a bit freaked out by it in a way, but excited at the same time. So I saw that in this cave, there was an old woman, there was a bed, there was a table, there was her. So I pull my consciousness back into my body. I get off the stepping machine. I go home. I get changed. I go onto the Madeleine McCann website, and I say, "Listen, I think I've found your daughter." And thinking back, I don't know why I did that, because I must have just sounded like a nutcase. But anyway, I phoned my teacher up again. I said, listen, I've just had an experience, okay? And I found Madeleine. She's come to speak to me. She goes, you better come and see me now. So I get in the car, still living in London at the time. I'm driving from London to Gloucestershire, and you've got to drive up the M4, which is a main motorway, and then you've got to go down the A417, which is like a dual carriageway. I'm driving my car down the road, and something is trying to make me drive my car into the central reservation. Well, I had to really fight with all of my might to keep the car on the road. So anyway, I end up getting to her house, and we go into this experience together. So we kind of bring our lights out of our body. We go to the cave. We go into the cave. We're having a look around. This lady is looking after Madeleine, like pretty well, feeding her and all this sort of stuff. We come out of the cave. We go right, and we're walking down, and we look out and we see a couple of islands. We're like on a sort of like a cliff top. There's water down there. We walk along. We see this metal pole with these flag markers. So we're reading the codes and the numbers and the letters. We're writing it all down. We go down the road to a market. We get the names of this market, blah, blah, blah. And we overhear this conversation of this guy with another guy. And these guys are two brothers. And they're two brothers. Their mum is the lady in the cave. And they're telling us that, you know, we need to move her on, blah, blah, blah. So to cut a long story short, what we found out is that these two brothers had taken Madeleine to order. Like they kind of stolen her to order for some Egyptian prince. This is the information that we were collecting. And like part of me was like, this is like too far-fetched, you know, this, you know, is this real? Anyway, we come out of this experience, we've got all this information. Now, my teacher worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division. She'd helped solve loads of crimes. You know, when they couldn't find murder weapons and stuff, she'd found them at the bottom of lakes, all sorts of different things. And where she lived, it was near GCHQ, which is like a central kind of intelligence place in the West Country in the UK, in Gloucestershire. And so she was always monitored all the time. Like, you know, she was good at what she did. So she phoned her pals in Scotland Yard and she said, listen, I'm with a client of mine. And we think we found Madeleine McCann. We think she's in Algeria, because when we looked out and we got a map out and we looked at the islands and we worked out where it was, she had to be somewhere in Algeria. And Scotland Yard turned around to her and said, yeah, I know. We've tracked her there ourselves already. And we're assembling a team to go in and extract her. We can't just go in and get her because we're going to cross money lines and religious lines and borders and all this sort of stuff. There's too much kind of other stuff at play. So anyway, when she told me this, I was like, this is bonkers. I can't believe this stuff's really happening. But it kind of really gave me confidence in my own abilities, that what I was able to tap into on the other side, like, this stuff's real, you know? And the more you go and work with this stuff on the other side, the more information you can collect. And it's so accurate. What actually happened with Madeleine is she was actually sold. She never ended up going to her original destination because there was too much heat, too much, you know, international press and all this sort of stuff. So the brothers ended up selling her to someone in South America. And I was communicating with her up until about 2013. I remember being in an ayahuasca ceremony in Brazil in 2013, and she came into the space to talk to me. And she said, you need to tell the story because I'll be gone soon. And I've never heard from her ever since. Yeah, like she was communicating all the time. Yeah, I even had the house that she was at in it was somewhere near Colombia. I had the house address. I was remote viewing the place. I was reading the letters. I had the address. I had her new name. Like they dyed her hair, called her Rosa. Like all this information.